The U.S. House of Representatives has passed a sweeping police reform bill that currently has little prospect of becoming law amid partisan gridlock. The Democratic-controlled chamber voted last night 236 to 181 for the measure, mainly along party lines. The legislation is named after George Floyd, the unarmed black man whose death in police custody last month ignited worldwide protests. President Trump has threatened to and will likely veto the measure. First District Congressman Jim Hagedorn is joining me now from Washington to talk about last night's vote. Congressman, was there a serious push, in your opinion, behind the House reform bill that was voted on last night for real action, or was this political maneuvering?
Hi, Betsy. Thanks for having me on. From our standpoint, it looked like political posturing. Speaker Pelosi just the other day said that Republicans basically had committed murder, and that she was blaming us for the problems. And then on top of that, allowed no Republican amendments or any input from our party. I supported the bill put forward by Pete Stauber, a Republican from northern Minnesota, my colleague. Pete's bill had some very good common sense reforms and would make sure that things were reported if there was the use of firearms, for instance, in an incident with a police officer, and took common sense steps towards doing what we're trying to do, which is to make sure that the police do their job the right way and we can minimize any issues with innocent folks. And unfortunately, the Speaker's bill had a provision in there that would have pretty much forced all police officers to accept liability to a point that nobody in the country would want to be a police officer. So it just looked like partisanship to me.
Are there any bills being written, or is there any talk that there will be any legislation to protect law enforcement and make tougher punishments for people who are police are trying to apprehend, so that the punishment would be harsher for people against police officers to protect our police officers?
Well, I do believe this, that the vast majority of our police officers are fine, upstanding folks that heroically do great work day in and day out, protecting and serving our communities. I respect and admire the police, and I always say we've got their backs. As far as how they should be treated, we can't have people being out there doing lawless criminal acts and putting our police officers in positions where hundreds a night over the last many nights have been harmed. Had rocks thrown at them, bricks, and other things. Some of them even shot. So we have to have a balance. But of course, do we want anyone to be in a situation like Mr. Floyd ever again? Of course not. Absolutely not. What happened to him was terrible. But we can't go the other way where we basically try and defund or defang the police to the point where we're not protecting the people and our property.
Let's talk about a post that you recently put out on Facebook talking about the Democrat Black Lives Matter Party, along with armies of rioters, are at war with our country, our beliefs, and our Western culture. You say that their radical movement is orchestrated and growing, and that they should never be allowed to have power, and that we must stand up and defend our country and our nation's identity, our Judeo-Christian values, and our American way of life. Let's talk about that and a lot of criticism that has followed that post, Congressman.
Well, and a lot of support, too. Look, this is the greatest country in the history of the world, the United States of America. And we need to protect it and defend it and make sure that we preserve our way of life. There are people out there in this country, a movement. Many people have backed with money. There's lots of people doing violence across the country. And they're at odds with our country's founding, with our history, and where we are as a nation. And I don't think we should minimize it anymore. I think we have to stand up and take it seriously, because they are an element of the Democrat Party, a good chunk of it. And most of those people vote for Democrats, I can tell you that. But what's been going on around the country, defacing our historical artifacts, burning our churches, all the rioting and looting that we saw in our own state, it's got to stop. It needs to be stopped. It said the same to the president. Get out there and do what you can, and the rest of us have to stand up and defend law enforcement and encourage the politicians in places like Minneapolis to allow law enforcement to do their jobs and to protect our people.
To call Black Lives Matter out, though, specifically like this, Congressman, and to say that they are the problem, you are then accused of being the divider with this.
Well, the people that are dividing the country are the ones like the guy from Black Lives Matter, which is what I was responding to, who said that statues of Jesus Christ should be torn down and churches should be burned, Christian churches, because it represented white supremacy. All right, now that's the person that's dividing the country. I'm standing up and saying enough of this. We're not going to allow that to happen. Certainly, I was elected to represent the views and values of the people in southern Minnesota, and I don't believe that they believe that our churches should be burned to the ground and images of Jesus should be destroyed. On top of that, you had another person from Black Lives Matter on Fox News just in the last couple of days saying there's going to be violence around this country until they get what they want. So, I'm just saying, if people are out there promoting violence, if they're saying things that go against our way of life, we have to stand up to it. And that's not everybody in the world that's a part of Black Lives Matter, of course. But the leadership has been saying some very provocative things. And then if you stand up against it, they call you all sorts of names. But hey, I'm hired to represent the people. I'm going to do what's right for the country. And I think it's the right thing to do is to speak out and defend our way of life.
I'm going to take a quick break. There's a completely another topic that I do want to get to, and that is our rural hospitals amidst this pandemic. I know that there is work being done, and let's take on that issue after the break.